Hello and welcome to the 15-Minute Book Club. I'm Alex Churchill. I'm here with my co-host Matt Bone. You all right, Boney?
Hello. Good to be here.
I'm
excited because we're delving into an important part of sort of mid-20th century history here that has massive repercussions. And I'm about halfway through the book and I am reading it. I'm going to put it like this because enjoying is a tough word. Because hello, sir, who are you and why?
Hang on, before we get started, let's just explain to people that don't understand who we are. We are the 15.
We do need to do that. You see, we're pros here. We get this wrong every week. So off you go.
The 15-Minute Book Club, our author will have 15 minutes to talk to you about their new book and convince you that you absolutely have to have a copy on your shelves. And then for our lovely Patreon people, you get to stay for 15 minutes more where we talk about how the book was written and go behind the scenes. With a minute to go on the main show, we throw at our guests the worst thing we think some awful person on the internet will say about their book, or we find a review that says something awful about their book. And they get basically the last minute of the show to make fun of it, don't they?
They do. And we'll see how that goes today because we're going geopolitical today with Mr. Gavin. But now that we've got the important things out, so join us on Patreon for an extra 15 minutes because this will be an interesting extra time because, hello, sir, who are you and why the heck are you here?
Hi, I'm Josh Ireland. And I've written a book called The Death of Trotsky, which tells the true story behind the assassination of Leon Trotsky in 1940.
Yes, and I have a lovely proof, which Josh doesn't actually have, which is quite...
No, I've never seen it, no. Well, I've heard there are finished copies knocking around, and I hadn't seen one either. So, that's why I was sort of jealously asking a question. I thought maybe you'd had it before I had. But
yeah, I've got the one that's got sort of 30 pages of blank index pages.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've read it. You haven't, so I guess it's better that you have it than I don't. So, yeah.
Super. Right, so we'll start the 15 minutes in a second. As per usual, I'm on timer duties, so this may or may not go terribly well. So, Josh, Alex is going to ask you the first question, but your 15 minutes begins now.
So I think, first of all, lay it out for people who don't understand, because he's not Lenin, he's not Stalin, he's someone different. Who is he and where does he fit into all of this 20th century mayhem in Russia?
So Trotsky is kind of integral to the 20th century mayhem in Russia. He's a very sort of classic Bolshevik story, in that he like Stalin is sort of born in like the edges of what was once the Russian Empire. So he actually comes from what is now Ukraine. He's the son of illiterate farmers. There's no sign in his life that he's ever going to go on to do what he does. Just like Stalin, who comes from Georgia, the son of an alcoholic and a seamstress. But he gets involved in revolutionary politics. He gets chucked out of his school. He marries a woman, gets involved in the 1905 revolution, which was the first sign that the Romanovs, who had ruled the country for 500 years, were on the precipice of something quite disastrous. He gets sent to Siberia. He abandons that family, finds a new one, and I think as all of this is happening, he's gaining a reputation for being an incredibly exciting, inventive, dazzling speaker. I mean, he can talk. When he talks, people are sort of electrified. And he couples this with, he's quite a flamboyant figure. He has this beautiful head of black hair, a very neat moustache and beard. He wears a pince-nez. He wears like impeccably tailored white linen suits. So on one hand, it sort of comes from this milieu, which is, supposed to be talking on behalf of the working class. But on the other hand, he presents as in a very different way. And he's not actually part of the Bolsheviks. He's joined, they're very kind of inclined towards factionalism. So early in the 20th century, they split into two groups. There's the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks. And there's not much point in sort of talking for too long about what the difference is, because it's incredibly...
Yeah, we've only got 15 minutes.
but eventually...
It's tedious. It's red versus white.
Red versus white. What Trotsky's very good at, because he's obsessed by revolution, it's all he thinks about. It's, whatever you think about him, he is someone who's animated by utopia. He wants to build this beautiful world. And the problem is that he's willing to do anything that's necessary to do it, just like people like Lenin, just like people like Stalin. So, sorry.
No, keep going.
So in 1917, when the Romanov regime can no longer sustain itself, and there's a popular revolution, he's actually in the States at the time, because basically no one will have him. In any time he goes to any country, they try and chuck him out. So the first thing he does is hops on a boat, arrives, and then starts beginning to organize. Because as well as being an incredible speaker, he knows how to basically start a revolution. He knows what you need to do. As a tiny, the Bolsheviks at this time are a tiny, tiny group. He knows what you need to do to seize power, to go from being an obscure sect to being the people that actually hold the lives of millions of people in your hands.
I think this is what I find fascinating about Trotsky. To be fair, Trotsky, Lenin, all of them, especially Stalin and Trotsky, this very similar, very basic upbringing, that you have Trotsky becoming this very erudite, very driven, commanding figure. How do they learn this? What do they do to become these people that, in Trotsky's case, manages to run the Red Army during the Civil War? How do they become these people? Is it just force of will? Is there training? How does Trotsky become Trotsky?
I think it's a combination of force of will, circumstance, luck, and a particular moment in time. I think Trotsky was clearly an outstandingly gifted student. I mean, I think he was insufferable probably at school, but it was, people could see early on that he was someone that needed to be given a platform to do something. His parents, luckily, although they were illiterate farmers, they knew people in Odessa with whom he could stay and go to school. And this is all done against the background of a very repressive regime. Schools so Trotsky is Jewish, from a Jewish background, which obviously becomes a sort of thread that is very important later on. When he's a child, the biggest obstacle is that lots of schools have quotas on how many Jewish pupils they can have. But I think it's a combination of ambition, talent, but also I think you just can't. It's very difficult now in a sort of post-ideological era for us to sort of recapture the force and the power of discovering an ideology like communism was for those people. A lot of people compare the Bolsheviks to sort of millenarian Christians, that they have this overwhelming, luminous belief in a future. Just as we sometimes find it hard to believe why, to sort of empathize with the actions of people during the Reformation, like why people would risk everything for something that for us doesn't seem to have the same value. I think you can say exactly the same with the Bolsheviks, that this was this animated force, that all of them dedicated their lives to it. They were happy to immolate their personal lives. They were happy to endure years and years of exile. They have this thing that drives them on and on and on. So I think that more than anything explains it. It's belief. It's wanting to create a better world. They're being impelled to do it.
I think as well, like, in order for him to be dead, someone has to want him dead. I think to a large extent that it's self-explanatory, right? You put a load of megalomaniacs in one room and it doesn't work out well. But the beef is with Stalin, isn't it? So how does this come about and how does it play out?
Well, I think I think it's fair to say that they probably had a sort of visceral loading through each other from the very first moment they met. The people sort of talk about how physical the loading was. That Stalin despised the sort of sweep of Trotsky's hair and his pretensions, and Trotsky despised what he saw as Stalin's sort of coarse provincialism. That he just thought of him as an oik. And Stalin saw Trotsky as someone who got above himself. And I think there was also this extra layer that because Trotsky sort of became a Bolshevik later on and then instantly assumed quite a leading role, I think Stalin resented that. And that resentment only built over, I think it was clear reasonably soon after the revolution that Lenin galvanizing and overwhelming a force as his personality was. His body wasn't going to last, and especially after he had strokes, there was a failed assassination attempt. So I think the rivalry between Trotsky and Stalin was sharpened by the knowledge that very, very soon one of them would probably want to. They both were competing for this role, this empty seat that they knew was going to be available quite soon.
It needs to be said that even with sort of rose-tinted glasses on, Stalin and Trotsky were ruthless individuals, weren't they? You don't get to where they got to without being, we'll say, driven in the force of willing to sacrifice a lot of people for the revolution.
Yeah, I think to some extent Trotsky's reputation has been slightly sort of laundered over the last sort of 50, 100 years because he didn't go on to do the mass exterminations that Stalin did. But I think it's pretty likely that had he become the general secretary of the party, he ruled Russia, something very similar would have happened. When he was in charge of the Red Army, he was. If you read his orders, that the word ruthless just comes up time and time and time again. He keeps saying, "We must be ruthless. We must be ruthless." And basically, what being ruthless means, it effectively means shooting anyone who disagrees with you. Shoot any soldier in the Red Army who takes one step back. Shoot them. Shoot any peasant that has given food to anyone in the White Armies. Shoot any political commissar who's not doing their job properly. I think that's basically the Bolshevik solution to any problem. Is just if you encounter like a wrinkle or if you encounter any sort of friction, just shoot your way out of it. And for them, the sake I think for them, they would probably say the ends justify the means. If you're that close to nirvana, to your utopia, like what price are a few dead bodies?
Just to steal your question, Alex, the tagline for the book is "The True Story of the Plot to Kill Stalin's Greatest Enemy." Have we had the story of the plot, the hunt, and the chase of Trotsky wrong for all these years? Have you found new stuff to tease our listeners to go out and grab the book?
Well, I think obviously our sense of what happened has richened since the fall of the Soviet Union, that people have been able to access sources that were previously unavailable. Although, obviously, since specifically since 2022, that those routes are pretty much shut off. But I think what sort of has typically been significantly underplayed in any previous accounts of this story is the perspective of Ramon Mercader, the Spanish communist who ended up assassinating Trotsky. He's sort of elided. People move across him because there isn't much in English about him. So I think that's the aspect that I think people forget. I think that there's a rush to sort of talk about Trotsky because he is the global. Well, he's the world figure. He's the person that was the most important person in the Soviet Union. But there are multiple people in this story. There were two people eventually in that room with that ice pick. And one of them is just as interesting as Trotsky in his own way.
Leads me on to my question that I wanted to ask, which is that obviously you're not just following the thread of Trotsky, as you've explained. You are talking for the first time, I think, about the guy that actually, because Stalin's not going to get his hands dirty, is he? So I love on the back of the book, you have the phrase dissolute Belgian playboy, which obviously is all fake, but explain to people a bit to introduce us to Ramon, because he sounds like an absolute character.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, great's with the wrong word. He in his own way, he's every bit as like emblematic of the sort of 20th century as Trotsky, But his sort of journey is very different because he comes from a sort of minor aristocratic background in Spain. So his sort of direction, he's going in the opposite direction of travel from Stalin. He's from that, and Trotsky, he's from that sort of class of people that suddenly become incredibly insecure in the 20th century. Lots of them turn to fascism. But for kind of a sort of strange sequence of events, he becomes a communist, largely because his mother, who was also an aristocrat, becomes a communist, which leads to an incredibly vicious divorce between his parents, where the children all end up sort of fleeing to France with their mother. And then by the time they return, Spain's in kind of all kinds of political turmoil. And before long, there's a civil war. And that's in some way the making of Ramon, but it's also the beginning of the end for him. That is during the civil war that he gets recruited by the KGB. And it's pretty clear why they recruited him, because he's basically the perfect spy. He's clever. He's interesting. He has a photographic memory. He's incredibly strong. He has these weird qualities like, he can disassemble and reassemble a rifle in the dark. He can, he's strong enough to fold whole coins in half. But he's also charming. He's really handsome. He's an accomplished liar. He's good at acting. If you were going to design someone to infiltrate any sort of organization, he's exactly the sort of person that you choose. And so the KGB, or the NKVD as they were at the time, recruited him. And I don't think they had a particular purpose in mind. I think they just saw him and thought, this man could be incredibly useful. I mean, which is very much like a sort of Russian perspective. It's like, they recruit people in America. They don't tell them what it's for, and it's only 20 years into their recruitment that they find them a role. I think they're very good at building this reservoir of talent, and Ramon was one of those people.
We're going to come back to Ramon and Kiridada's mum in the extra time, but we've got just under a minute left. Mr. Gammon time, and this is me. Why, after all these years, are we still banging on about Trotsky, right? He lost to a guy who ended up murdering millions and millions of people. He died in Mexico, more or less on his own, completely isolated. Why, Mr. Ireland, does Trotsky matter in the 21st century?
Well, I think he matters, for the actual role he played in history, in that I don't think the Russian Revolution in 1917 would have been able to take place without him, without his energy, without his talent. And there's no way that... And as you know, because without the Russian Revolution, the 20th century looks completely different. But I think he's important because he's so representative of a particular moment in history, of a time when people who were completely taken over by particular ideas of the world suddenly thrust into positions of power and started changing things. But also, he tells us so much about the sort of moral heart of the Russian Revolution, that someone who could have been integral to it could also be rejected by it so quickly. I mean, that's the sort of story of all revolutions. It's like Danton being guillotined. It's a reminder that sort of some things change, but some things never change.
Revolutions eat their children.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. See, that 15 minutes goes quick, doesn't it?
It does go really quick. Yeah. I wasn't looking at the camera, but yeah, it's it's shocking.
So I'm looking forward to our Patreon extra time because we've got Ramon, we've got Kiridada, we've got Frida Kahlo showing up as well.
How you write a Russian history book as well when no one wants to go to Russia. Those are really good stuff to come.
So yes, dear viewer, listener, however you're joining us, please leave us a review, like and subscribe. All the links to Josh's book, which when this goes out is, I think, release day. We're going to put this out, which will be handy. So so check out the affiliate links for our bookshops in the description below. We'll put Josh's website up there as well, so you can check out the other fun stuff that he's done. But if you are leaving us, thank you for joining us. And to our Patreon people, stick around.